Welcome back to Too Young To Grieve, and this is going to be a Father's Day special. This week's episode is built entirely off of the questions, the thoughts, the feelings that you all sent in around Father's Day. Because Father's Day is one of those days that just hits different when your dad's no longer here, or when you're losing him slowly, or when you're even a dad yourself trying to figure out how to celebrate that whilst also grieving your own father. So that's what I want to dive into today. And just before we do, I just want to thank everyone again who supports this podcast in any way, who likes, comments, subscribes, follows, whatever it is, any way that you help this podcast. I really appreciate it because not only does it allow us to reach more listeners, but it allows us to keep having these conversations about grief. And that is all we want to do. Just talk about grief so openly. So thank you again for all your support. And if you're new here, then feel free to subscribe or follow to the podcast for weekly episodes. Speaking of which, let's dive into today's episode. And let's start with the obvious thing. Father's Day, it's not just a day. It's literally everywhere for weeks before. It's adverts, it's emails, it's tag your dad posts, it's every shop window with barbecue sets in, with cards saying Happy Father's Day. And those cards aisles that you used to walk straight past without even noticing. And now you just can't even walk past it at all. It's the people in your life casually saying, "What are you doing for your dad this weekend?" without even thinking twice. Because most people, they don't have to think twice. And if your dad's passed away or you're losing him, that's weeks of being reminded of something that you don't have anymore. It's not just one hard day as people think. It's weeks of build up to that one hard day. And it's not that you forget. You never forget. Grief just doesn't work like that. It's not something that fades quietly into the background and only resurfaces on the anniversary. We always talk about this. Grief is always there. It does get lighter. And it's there most days in some form, whether that's loud or quiet. But what a day like Father's Day does is it takes whatever's quietly there and it literally ramps up the volume all the way up. It's the same grief, it's just impossible to ignore for a day or even the weeks leading up to it because you're getting constant reminders. And it's that combination, the personal weight of missing him, plus the world being so loud about something that you can't have, and that makes this day so specifically exhausting. And that's why these special days, the Father's Days, the Mother's Days, all of these things, it's a different kind of tired to the normal grief. It's tiring in a way that's hard to explain to people who haven't lost a parent, because to them it's just a nice Sunday with a card, with a barbecue. But to you, it's a day that you have to actively get through. So that's why I think today's episode is so important and why it deserves its own conversation rather than just being around grief in general and dropped in with grief in general. So let's get into your questions because you've all sent in some really honest, powerful questions, and I want to do them justice and answer them as best as I can and get through as many as I can as well. So I've picked out a fair few, and I really want to dive into these today to give you some understanding and just feeling seen on a day and a weekend that is so difficult. So the first one I picked out, which is probably the question that I get asked the most around days like this, is how do you get through these special days? And the reason I think I get asked this so much is because I think a lot of us are looking for a formula. Like there's a right way to do it, and we just haven't been told it yet. So I want to start this by saying clearly that there isn't a right way to do these type of days. There's no script, there's no formula, there's no way to do it right. Anyone who tells you there's a correct way to spend the day is probably just guessing, because grief doesn't work off a specific template. It works off of how you can deal with it and what works for you. Your relationship with your dad, what you need, and where you're at right now versus where you might be next year. Because this will be my fifth Father's Day, and each day looks different. Each year it looks different for me. And here's the truth, there's no version of getting through it that looks the same for everyone. And that's actually a good thing once you're able to understand that, because it means you're not failing if your version looks very different to someone else's. Because some people want to be surrounded by people They want noise, distraction, family around them, friends around them, maybe something to keep their mind busy so the day doesn't just feel like a void. And that works for some people. Keeping moving, staying social, not giving the silence and the thoughts to the time to creep in. Other people want the complete opposite. They want to be alone, don't want to perform being okay for anyone else. They don't want to explain themselves. They just want a space to feel whatever they're going to feel without an audience there to see it. And that's just as valid. Some of the heaviest days are easier alone than surrounded by people who mean well but don't quite know what to say. And some people want to do something that makes them feel close to their dad. Visit somewhere that meant something to you both. Eat his favourite meal, even if you've never been able to cook it as well as he did. Put on a song that instantly takes you back to being in the car with him, or watching football with him, or going somewhere with him. Whatever it was for you. And there's something powerful about choosing an action that does connect you to him on purpose, rather than just waiting for memories to sort of ambush you throughout the day, because that's really hard. And then there's another group of people who want to do absolutely nothing related to it at all. They don't want to mark it, don't want to acknowledge it. They just want the day to pass like any other day. And I think sometimes that gets judged, like you're avoiding it or you're not doing grief properly. But ignoring day on purpose is still a choice. And it's a completely valid one, because you don't owe anyone, you don't owe a day, a calendar, a performance because it's one of those special days. You do whatever works for you. So, what I'd say is don't let anyone else's idea of what this day should look like dictate what you do with it. If you want to ignore it, ignore it. If you want to make it all about your dad, make it all about your dad. If you want to be around people, be around people. Or if you just want to go off grid and disappear for the day, then absolutely fine. Because the goal isn't to perform grief correctly for anyone else, whether that's family, friends, or even yourself. The goal is just to get through the day in whatever keeps you steady. And steady looks very different for everyone. So remember that. And another thing on this, whatever you choose this year doesn't have to be what you choose next year. You're allowed to change how you deal with these days. You're allowed to change your mind. Maybe this year you just want to go off grid, ignore everything and everyone. And next year you might want to do something special to honor him. And that's absolutely fine. There's no consistency requirement for you each year to do the exact same thing. You get to reassess every single year based on where you're at, based on where your feeling is with your grief journey. And that's absolutely fine. You can do that because the feelings of grief, they do change over time. The next question was, this is my first Father's Day without my dad. Is this the worst one? Is the first one the worst Father's Day? And I always like to be honest when it comes to grief from my own experience, rather than just say something for the sake of saying it and say something comforting that isn't necessarily true. Because I think when people are going through their first one, the last thing that someone needs to be told is that something that doesn't really match the reality of it. For a lot of people, the first one is brutal. And that's not necessarily because it's the saddest one ever in terms of raw emotion, but because of what it represents. It's the first time that this day exists without him in it. And that being a possibility at all is very tough. And every year before this, even if it was a hard year, even if things were complicated, there was still a version of the day where your dad existed in it somehow. And this year, the first one, that's gone completely. And that is a whole different type of grief to process. It's not just sadness, it's basically confronting that new reality for the first time on a day that is specifically built around that relationship with your dad. And there's no, maybe next year will be different yet, because you haven't lived through a version of this where it has eventually softened. So you don't know, because you don't have evidence yet that you'll get through this day as you think you will and come out the other side feeling more okay. So it's just new. It's just something that you've never experienced before. And it's like anything that you've never experienced before. It's weird. It's hard. You don't know what to expect. And it's just new and raw, and everything still feels like it's happening for the first time, because in a lot of ways it is. And another thing that's hard is that the people around you might also not fully understand why this particular day hits so much harder than, say, a random Tuesday 3 weeks ago. And that can make the first one feel so isolating in a way that's hard to explain to anyone. It's hard to put into words, because you might find yourself having to explain your own grief to people who think you should be getting better by now, when actually you're just hitting a new wall of grief that you haven't hit before, because this is the first time that you're experiencing a day like this dedicated to fathers. But here's what I will say, and I really want you to hear this, and I really want this to land. The first one being hard doesn't mean everyone after it is just as hard, or that it gets worse, or that you're stuck feeling like this forever. Because I think that's the fear a lot of people have going into a day like this. They think, if this is how bad the first one is, how am I supposed to do this every single year for the rest of my life? And I understand that fear completely, because I had that fear too. But more often than not, that's not generally how it does go. A lot of people find that the firsts are the heaviest across the board. First birthday without them, first Christmas, first Father's Day, first anniversary. Those firsts can carry extra weight because, like I say, they're confronting that reality for the first time in that specific context. But once you have been through it, once you've got something that you didn't have before, proof that you can survive that day and get through it, that changes things. Even if it doesn't make it painless, because the days are always tough, no matter how long into your journey, you just think about the person a little bit more, and that's tough. But it does change. And there's something on the other side of that first one. Not better. Don't like to use that word, because I don't love using that word at all for grief. Like there's some destination where it stops hurting altogether. But different, more familiar. You learn how to carry the grief on these days instead of being absolutely flattened by it every single time that it comes round. The day might still be hard in year 3, year 5, year 10, but it tends to become a different kind of hard, one that you now have the tools for, rather than one that completely comes out of nowhere and you didn't even know that these feelings were going to come up on a day like this. So if this is your first one, you don't need to be okay on that day. You don't need to have a plan. You don't need to perform strength for anyone. And you don't need to compare how you're handling it to how anyone else seems to be handling theirs. Whether it's someone from your family, whether it's someone else who you've seen navigating grief, you're allowed to just get through it and just survive it. And surviving a day like this is enough. And that is the whole bar for a first day like this. Another question that I get asked a lot, and it came up again, was how do you deal with the Father's Day advertising? It's all over my feed right now. And it is. We literally did a Father's Day football tournament the other day, went to the pub opposite, and there was a Father's Day sign there. You couldn't write it. But at the end of the day, what I always say with grief is the world continues. These days continue, and they're there. Those things are there. And I think that question is so underrated, because nobody really talks about it. But anyone who's lost someone knows exactly what this feels like. Those weeks leading up to it are so hard. Your feeds get flooded. The supermarkets get flooded with loads of Father's Day things going on. Every brand wants to sell you something for your dad. Every account is doing some version of tag the person who raised you, tag the man who raised you. It's relentless. And it's not even slightly built with grieving people in mind. Hence why we did the Father's Day football tournament. Hence why we've got a meetup this weekend for Father's Day, because there isn't anything for people without fathers. It's all tailored to those with fathers still in their lives. And again, that just links to grief not being thought about or talked about, because it's a hard topic to talk about, but it's even harder to deal with it. So Yeah, these adverts are not made with grieving people in mind, full stop. They're made for the assumed default that everyone scrolling has a dad to buy a card for, a dad to take out for a meal, a dad to call. That's the target audience for all of it. So when you don't have that, it can feel like the entire world or internet or social media forgot that you even exist or you've even experienced this. It's or worse, it's almost like they're like rubbing it in your face on purpose, you know? See that I see things like that and I'm like, are you having a laugh? Even though obviously no one is doing that intentionally, it's just adding more to your plate and an already tough time from an algorithm and a marketing calendar that has no concept of what you're going through. And it's not just the big obvious stuff either. It's the smaller things, you know. It's so hard, even though we love our friends. It's so hard when you see a friend posting a nice photo with their dad, or a colleague mentioning that they're going to see their dad this weekend. They're going to take him for a pub lunch. They're going to take him out. An ad for a gift set that you scroll past without even meaning to read it, and then it comes up. Buy this for your dad, and it is a sucker punch. It is. It all adds up. It's a thousand small reminders all within the space of a scroll of something that you don't have. So I also want to talk about some practical things that you can actually do about this because you don't have to just sit there and absorb it. That's what I've realized and what I've been told is you can mute keywords if your platform lets you. A lot of social platforms now let you filter out specific words or phrases from your feed for a set period of time. So, for example, Father's Day, if that's going to be everywhere for the next 2 weeks, you can mute it and just not see it as much. And that's not avoiding it, that's just protecting your own headspace, the same way you might avoid a trigger in any other part of your life. We don't want to be constantly reminded of these things. You can obviously unfollow or snooze accounts or unsubscribe to email lists that you know are going to be about Father's Day content all week, especially if it's not someone close to you or just brands or pages. You can always refollow them after the day's passed if you want to, because there's no rule that says you have to stay subscribed to content that's actively going to upset you for a long period of time in the build up to it. On the day, I quite like to take a break from social media entirely. If that is realistic for you, then give that a go. Not forever, just for a day or two or for the weekend, because sometimes the best way to deal with a flood of messages or constant reminders is just to step out the water for a bit, step back, and just have a break from it all. And if you can't avoid it because it is tough, and a lot of the time you genuinely can't, you might get an email from someone you didn't even realize you still were subscribed to. Because it's not just social media, it's walking down the road and a shop window has something. It's the television having an advert, conversations at work or out and about. Just know that the algorithm doesn't know your story. The advert doesn't know your story. And you don't owe your piece to a marketing campaign that is built for people with dads. You're allowed to feel upset and you're allowed to just close the app, turn off the telly, walk past the shop window without even engaging with it. Because protecting yourself from something hurtful isn't weakness. It just makes sense. And that's absolutely fine. Another one which hits close to home is, how do you celebrate the new fathers in your life while grieving the loss of your own? That is one of the harder ones because it's not just about your grief in isolation, which a lot of the time it is. It's about holding two completely different emotional experiences at the exact same time. And you're trying to do right by both of them, which is hard because someone you love might have just become a dad or is already a dad, and you want to be happy for them, genuinely happy. Could be your brother, your best mate, a partner. And watching someone you care about become a father is supposed to be one of the best moments in life. And you don't want your grief to take that away from them or from yourself. And at the exact same time, there's a quiet ache underneath it, as always is with grief. Even though 80, 90, 95% of the time the joy is there, you might have that 5, 10% of grief just underneath it. Because it's a reminder again of what you don't have anymore. Or in some cases, what you never got to see. Your own dad in that same role. Your own kids never getting to meet their granddad. And all of that is so hard. And both of these things are real. And I think a lot of people feel like they're not allowed to hold both at once. Like feeling the sadness somehow means they're not being a good friend, partner, sibling, by not being 100% happy for the other person. But you can be properly happy for someone and properly sad for yourself in the same moment. And it's not a contradiction. That's just what grief does. It it doesn't ask for your full attention, grief sometimes. It doesn't wait for a convenient moment. It just sits alongside everything else going in your life. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, it's just there. It just sits there. Grief is always there in some capacity. But what I'd say is you don't need to hide the sad part to make room for the happy part. And you also don't need to perform extra happiness to cover up that sad part. You can show up for the people in your life who are becoming dads or being great dads, celebrate with them properly, be present, be excited, and still privately let yourself feel whatever you're feeling about your own dad, whether that's grief, whether it's longing, whether it's envy, or all three at the same time. Because nobody else needs to see that second part for it to be valid. And you don't need to apologize for it even existing or being a thought alongside the happiness either. So, if you need a moment alone after the celebrations to process what's underneath it, take that moment. If you need to cry on the way home after a really great day celebrating someone else's fatherhood, that's not you being ungrateful or unable to be happy for them. That's just two true things existing in the same chest and heart at the same time. And that's okay. It's okay to feel those things because that's just what grief does. Another good question that I got asked is not something that I'm currently in a position to talk about through my own lived experience, but it's how do you get through a first Father's Day as a dad whilst grieving your own? And I think that this is one of the most quietly difficult situations that someone can be in, and it probably doesn't get talked about nearly enough because as a new father, you're meant to be celebrated. You might be getting cards. Partner might be planning something nice. Maybe there's a meal out or a gift waiting for you as a new father. And underneath all of it, you're missing the person who should be teaching you how to do it. The person who is meant to be the reference point for what kind of dad you'd want to be. And they're not there to ask, they're not there to call, nor even see you doing it. And there's something very strange and disorientating about the feeling of stepping into being the dad being celebrated whilst still very much being someone's grieving son underneath that role. And you never stop being your dad's kid just because you're now someone else's parent. That part of you doesn't ever switch off. If anything, becoming a parent yourself can make the loss of your own dad feel even bigger because now you understand things about fatherhood that you didn't understand before. And you just wish more than ever that you could talk to him about it. And there can also be a strange pressure in that position because you might feel like you need to be the strong one, the strong father. You might feel like your kids don't necessarily need to see you upset on a day that's meant to be about celebrating you. Your partner might be trying to make the day special for you, and it can feel hard to be anything other than grateful and happy in front of them. This is a really, really great thing that's happened to you, being a father. But even if there is something heavier going on underneath all that as well, which is so hard. So If this is you, as I said, I'm not a father myself, so I can't give you lived experience, perspective, and advice on it. But as with a lot of things in grief, I think it's okay to let the day be both things. To let yourself receive what your own kids or partner are giving you, the cards, the hugs, whatever it looks like in your house. You're allowed to receive those fully and properly, and you deserve those because you can have great moments. You can experience joy and grief, and you're just allowed to experience that. So let that be a good moment for you. And also, if you feel it and you need to give yourself a moment, even if it's a minute, 5 minutes, or longer, somewhere private to acknowledge what is missing, to have a think about your dad, to miss him, to chat to him, to feel whatever needs to be felt without an audience, that's fine too. You don't have to pick one or the other. You're allowed to be celebrated and still be sad on the same day. You're allowed to be a brilliant present dad and also a grieving son at the exact same time. And neither one of those cancels the other out. So remember that. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy at all. But you are allowed to experience whatever you experience on those days, whether it's joy or whether it's a little bit of grief as well. Now, one of the last ones I wanted to answer was how do I spend Father's Day? And I'll be honest, it's one of those that is different every year for me. And I think that's why I left this one till last, because that's the point that I want to leave you with. Some years it looks like spending time with people who knew him and being able to talk openly about him, share memories. And other years it's just looked like me keeping busy, barely acknowledging the day at all, because that's just what I needed. And there's no single answer that I can give you that would actually be useful. Because as I said at the start, there's no formula for this. And because that is the honest answer, it really depends on where I am with it at the time. And as I said, that's allowed to change. So I have absolutely no plans for this Sunday. And we'll just see what happens on the day. How I'm feeling, how I wake up, how the day before with the Too Young To Grieve community, how that makes me feel. How maybe talking to other people in the community about my dad or about listening to their stories about their dads, how that makes me feel. If I need a little breather on Sunday, I'll have a little breather. If I want to talk more about it, then I'll talk more about it. Just see what happens on the day. And that's the best advice I can give you in preparing for a day like this, is just see what happens on the day, how you're feeling, what you feel up to, because you might surprise yourself. And that's completely okay too. So whatever you're doing this Sunday, whether that's something that honors your dad or something that's got absolutely nothing to do with him at all, or you're just getting through it quietly without telling anyone how hard it actually is, I hope that you know through this episode, through people around you, through this community, I hope you know that however you're feeling about it is absolutely valid. There is absolutely no right way to do this. There's no version of Father's Day grief that's more correct than another version. There is just literally your version. And that's the only one that matters. Because that's how you will get through the day. And that's all that matters, is how you get through it, how you survive it. And however that looks is absolutely fine. So that's what I want to leave you with for this Father's Day special episode. Just know that you're not alone on a day like this. There'll be a lot of people feeling similar to yourself. And however you get through it is absolutely fine. So again, thank you so much for the questions that you sent in. I hope that this has covered a wide range of topics and given you some thoughts and perspectives, made you feel seen, heard, and understood on a very difficult day and weekend. And if any of it has resonated with you, or you know someone who might need to hear it, then please do share this episode with them, because sometimes that can be easier than trying to find the words for days like this yourself. So thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. And I'll see you on the next episode of Too Young to Grieve.